The traveling wagon groaned under Tabitha Bradford's weight as it rolled into Wyatt, Missouri on a scorching afternoon in July of 1878, and she pressed her hand against the wooden side, wishing the earth would simply swallow her whole before anyone noticed her arrival. She had traveled 3 weeks from Philadelphia, answering an advertisement for a seamstress position at the general store, her fingers calloused from years of needlework that had been her only respectable means of survival after her parents died of consumption 2 winters past. The wagon driver, a gruff man who had barely spoken to her during their journey from Kansas City, helped her down with visible effort, and she caught the way his eyes flickered with judgment before he turned away to unload her single trunk. The sun beat down mercilessly on the dusty Main Street, where wooden buildings lined either side like sentinels guarding secrets, and she could feel sweat trickling down her back beneath her heavy traveling dress, the fabric straining across her broad shoulders and generous stomach. Tabitha was not ignorant of her appearance. At 20 years old, she stood barely 5 feet 3 inches tall, but weighed considerably more than most women her age, her body soft and round in every direction, her face full and flushed from the heat. She had learned long ago to avoid mirrors except when absolutely necessary, and she wore the plainest dresses she could afford, always in dark colors that she hoped would minimize her size. The other passengers on the stagecoach had given her wide berth, and she had caught whispered comments about whether the wagon would hold, whether the horses would manage. Each word had been a knife to her heart, but she had sat in silence, hands folded in her lap, pretending she heard nothing at all. The general store stood across the street, its painted sign reading Harrison's Mercantile in faded red letters, and she gathered her courage, smoothing down her dress with trembling hands. A group of men stood outside the saloon next door, their conversation halting as they noticed her, and she felt their stares like brands on her skin. One of them said something she could not quite hear, and laughter erupted, sharp and cruel. She forced herself to walk forward, each step an act of will, her worn boots kicking up small clouds of dust. The weight of their attention made her want to run, to climb back on the next wagon heading anywhere but here, but she had spent her last dollars on the journey west, and she had nowhere else to go. The door to the Mercantile jangled as she pushed it open, and blessed coolness enveloped her, along with the mingled scents of coffee, leather, and dried herbs. A thin woman with graying hair looked up from behind the counter, her expression neutral but not unkind. "Can I help you, miss?" she asked, her voice carrying the soft drawl of someone who had lived in Missouri all her life. "I am Tabitha Bradford," Tabitha said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I wrote about the seamstress position. Mrs. Harrison replied and told me to come." Recognition dawned in the woman's eyes, followed quickly by something that might have been disappointment or surprise. Tabitha could not tell which. "Oh, yes. Yes, of course. I am Alina Harrison. We have been expecting you, though perhaps not quite so soon." She came around the counter, wiping her hands on her apron, and Tabitha saw her gaze travel down, taking in Tabitha's considerable size. "Well, you have had a long journey. Let me show you to your quarters. We have a small room above the store where you will be staying." The room proved to be exactly as described, small but clean, with a narrow bed, a washstand, and a window overlooking the street. Mrs. Harrison left her to settle in, promising to discuss work arrangements after Tabitha had rested, and Tabitha sank onto the bed, which creaked alarmingly beneath her. She covered her face with her hands, exhaustion and despair washing over her in equal measure. This was supposed to be a new beginning, a chance to build a life where no one knew her history, where she might find some measure of peace. Instead, she had simply carried her shame with her, packed as surely as her few belongings. After washing her face and changing into a fresh dress, only slightly less worn than her traveling clothes, Tabitha made her way back downstairs. The store was empty of customers now, and Mrs. Harrison stood at a table in the back corner where bolts of fabric were stacked in neat rows. She gestured for Tabitha to join her. "The work is straightforward," Mrs. Harrison explained, her tone businesslike. "Mending, alterations, occasionally sewing new garments for customers who can afford them. Most folks around here make do with ready-made clothes or hand-me-downs, but there is always work for someone with a good needle. You said in your letter that you trained with a seamstress in Philadelphia." "Yes, madam. For 8 years, starting when I was 12. Mrs. Kellerman taught me everything from basic stitching to fine embroidery and pattern making." Tabitha ran her fingers over a bolt of blue calico, the familiar texture soothing. "I can work quickly and neatly." "Good. You will take your meals with my husband and me. Breakfast at 6, dinner at noon, supper at 6 in the evening. We do not hold with tardiness or wasted food." Mrs. Harrison's eyes flickered to Tabitha's waist. "I expect you will find the portions adequate." The barb landed as intended, and Tabitha felt her cheeks burn. "I am certain they will be more than sufficient, Mrs. Harrison. Thank you. You may call me Mrs. Alina if you prefer. Now, tomorrow you will start early. There is a pile of mending that has been waiting, and Mrs. Thompson needs a dress let out before Sunday services." The older woman paused, then added with unexpected gentleness, "I know the journey west is not easy, especially for a young woman alone. Wyatt is a decent town for the most part. Keep to your work and your prayers, and you will do well enough here." That first evening, Tabitha took her supper at the Harrisons' small table in the back room of the store. Mr. Harrison was a quiet man with kind eyes who asked polite questions about her journey and welcomed her to Missouri. The food was simple but well prepared. Salt pork with beans and cornbread, and Tabitha forced herself to eat slowly, to take smaller portions than she wanted, acutely aware of their observation. Her stomach felt hollow even after she finished, but she refused to ask for more, refused to confirm whatever they already thought about her appetite. The first week passed in a blur of needle and thread, of learning where supplies were kept and how the Harrisons preferred things organized. The work itself was satisfying, the familiar rhythm of stitching calming her anxious thoughts. Customers came and went, some merely curious about the new seamstress, others with genuine need of alterations or repairs. Tabitha kept her head down and her conversation minimal, responding politely but offering nothing of herself. She felt their stares, heard the whispers that stopped when she entered a room, saw the way children pointed until their mothers shushed them. On her 8th day in Wyatt, a Saturday, Tabitha ventured out to see more of the town. The Harrisons had given her the afternoon free, and though part of her wanted to stay hidden in her small room, she knew she needed to become familiar with her new home. The town was larger than she had initially thought, with a proper church, a schoolhouse, 2 saloons, a smithy, a doctor's office, and various other establishments spreading out from the main street. She walked slowly in the oppressive heat, her dress clinging to her damp skin, past the hotel where a few men sat on the porch smoking and watching the street with idle interest. She was examining the posted notices outside the sheriff's office when she heard hoofbeats, and turned to see a rider approaching at an easy canter. The man sat his horse with the unconscious grace of someone born to the saddle, his broad-brimmed hat shading his face from the brutal sun. He was tall and lean, his shirt dusty from travel, and as he drew closer, Tabitha found herself staring despite her better judgment. He had strong features, tanned skin, and dark hair that curled slightly over his collar. He could not have been much older than his mid-20s, and when he swung down from his horse with fluid ease, she saw that he moved with the confident economy of a man comfortable in his own body. Their eyes met for just a moment, his a startling shade of green, and Tabitha felt her breath catch. Then reality crashed back, and she quickly looked away, shame flooding through her. What must she look like to him, this sweating, enormous woman gawking at him like some lovesick fool? She turned to hurry back toward the mercantile, but in her haste, she caught her foot on a loose board in the walkway and stumbled, her hands flying out to catch herself. Strong hands caught her arms, steadying her before she could fall. "Easy there, madam. Are you all right?" His voice was deep and warm, tinged with concern, and Tabitha found herself looking up into that handsome face, now creased with worry. Up close, she could see the dust on his cheeks, the lines at the corners of his eyes from squinting into the sun, the shadow of stubble on his jaw. "I am fine, thank you," she managed, pulling away from his grasp as quickly as she could. "Please excuse me." She fled before he could respond, her heart hammering, her face burning with humiliation. She did not stop until she reached the mercantile and climbed the stairs to her room, where she sank onto the bed and pressed her hands to her hot cheeks. What was wrong with her? The man had simply been kind, helping her when she stumbled, and she had run away like a frightened rabbit. He probably thought her mad or rude or both. And why should it matter what he thought? He was just another cowboy in a town full of them, no different from the others who looked through her as if she were invisible or looked at her with barely concealed disgust. That evening at supper, Mr. Harrison mentioned that Lucas Zander had returned to town. "Saw him ride in this afternoon," he said, cutting a piece of chicken. "Been up north buying cattle. He has done well for himself these past few years, built that ranch of his up from nothing." "He is a good man," Mrs. Alina agreed. "Works hard, pays his debts, respects the Lord. His parents would have been proud. Such a tragedy, what happened to them?" "What happened?" Tabitha asked before she could stop herself, then immediately regretted showing interest. "Cholera, 5 years back," Mr. Harrison said soberly. "Took both his parents and his younger sister within a week. Lucas was only 20 at the time, suddenly responsible for the ranch and everything else. He could have sold out and gone east, but he stayed, built the place up. He is one of the largest landowners in the county now." Tabitha filed the information away, telling herself it did not matter, that she would likely never speak to Lucas Zander again. But that night, lying in her narrow bed listening to the sounds of the town settling into darkness, she found herself remembering the genuine concern in his eyes, the gentle strength of his hands steadying her. No man had touched her, even in such an innocent way, in longer than she could remember. No man had looked at her with anything but derision or pity in years. She pressed her hand to her chest, feeling the heavy beat of her heart, and told herself firmly not to be a fool. Sunday dawned bright and hot, and Tabitha dressed in her best dress, which was still rather shabby for church services. The Harrisons walked together, and she followed a few steps behind, acutely conscious of the way her dress stretched across her body, of the sweat already dampening her collar. The church was a simple white building with a tall steeple, and inside, the pews were already filling with townspeople in their Sunday finest. Tabitha slid into a pew near the back, hoping to remain inconspicuous, but she felt eyes on her throughout the service. The preacher, Reverend Matthews, delivered a sermon about charity and loving one's neighbor, his voice booming through the small space. Tabitha tried to focus on the words, on the familiar hymns, but her attention kept drifting to the people around her, wondering what they thought of her, whether they were judging her even now in the house of God. After the service, people gathered outside in small groups, talking and laughing in the sunshine. Tabitha made to return immediately to the mercantile, but Mrs. Alina caught her arm. "Come, let me introduce you properly to some of the ladies. You cannot hide away forever, girl." She found herself in a circle of women, most of them older, all of them clearly curious. There was Mrs. Thompson, the doctor's wife, a pinched-looking woman with sharp eyes. Mrs. Caldwell, who ran the boarding house, plump and friendly. Miss Sarah Green, the schoolteacher, young and pretty with golden hair. Mrs. Chen, who ran the laundry with her husband, quiet but observant. They asked polite questions about where she came from, about her journey west, about her work, and Tabitha answered as briefly as courtesy allowed. "You must come to our quilting circle," Mrs. Caldwell said warmly. "We meet every Wednesday afternoon at the church. Any woman with a needle is welcome." "Thank you. I will consider it," Tabitha said, though she had no intention of subjecting herself to hours of sitting with women who would smile to her face while judging her behind her back. "Lucas Zander, as I live and breathe, Mrs." Thompson's voice rose with pleasure, and Tabitha's stomach clenched as she saw the cowboy approaching, now cleaned up and wearing a proper suit, his hair neatly combed. He looked even more handsome than he had the day before, and Tabitha felt herself shrinking, trying to make herself smaller, invisible. "Ladies," Lucas said, tipping his hat with a smile that transformed his serious face. "Good to see you all. Fine sermon today." "Lucas, you must meet Miss Bradford," Mrs. Alina said, and to Tabitha's horror she gestured toward her. "She is our new seamstress, just arrived from Philadelphia. Miss Bradford, this is Mr. Lucas Zander. He has a ranch north of town." Lucas turned to her and recognition flickered in his eyes. "We have met, actually, or nearly. I believe I had the pleasure of keeping you from a fall yesterday, Miss Bradford." "Yes, thank you for your assistance," Tabitha said stiffly, wishing the earth would open beneath her feet. "No need for thanks. Anyone would have done the same." His eyes were kind, genuinely interested. "How are you finding Wyatt? It must be quite different from Philadelphia." "It is certainly warmer," she managed, and a few of the ladies laughed. "That it is. Summers here will test you, but the winters are generally mild. If you need anything at all to help you settle in, please do not hesitate to ask. We take care of our own in Wyatt." He spoke with such sincerity that Tabitha felt tears prick her eyes, and she blinked them back furiously. "You are very kind, Mr. Zander. Just being neighborly, Miss Bradford." He tipped his hat again and moved on to greet other parishioners, and Tabitha allowed herself to breathe again. "Such a good man," Mrs. Thompson sighed. "It is a shame he is not married. Half the eligible girls in the county have set their caps at him." "He is too particular," Miss Green said with a small smile, "and too busy with that ranch of his. I swear the man works from sunup to sundown every day." Tabitha excused herself as soon as she could and walked back to the mercantile alone, her thoughts in turmoil. Lucas Zander's kindness had been genuine. She was certain of that, but it had also been impersonal, the sort of courtesy he would extend to anyone. She would do well to remember that and not build foolish fantasies in her mind. The weeks that followed established a routine that was both comforting and monotonous. Tabitha rose early, worked steadily at her sewing, took her meals with the Harrisons, and retired to her room each evening. She proved herself skilled with a needle, and word spread. More customers came with more complex requests. A wedding dress for a young bride, a suit for a businessman traveling to St. Louis, delicate embroidery on a christening gown. The work filled her days and kept her hands busy, though it did nothing to ease the loneliness that settled over her like a heavy blanket. She saw Lucas Zander occasionally when he came into town for supplies, and he always greeted her politely, sometimes stopping to chat for a moment about the weather or the town news. Each time, Tabitha felt her treacherous heart leap, and each time she firmly reminded herself that his friendliness meant nothing, that a man like him would never look at a woman like her with anything resembling romantic interest. One sweltering afternoon in late August, Tabitha was working on a particularly intricate piece of lacework when the bell above the door jangled and Lucas entered, his hat in his hands. He nodded to Mrs. Aliner, then his gaze found Tabitha in her corner. "Miss Bradford, I hope I am not interrupting, but I have a favor to ask." Tabitha set down her work, her pulse quickening. "Of course, Mr. Zander. How may I help you? My foreman, Hank, is getting married next month. His bride-to-be, Mary Collins, needs a wedding dress, but her family does not have much money. I would like to commission you to make the dress and send the bill to me." He spoke matter-of-factly, but there was warmth in his eyes. "Mary is a sweet girl, and Hank is like family to me. I want them to have a proper wedding." "That is very generous of you," Tabitha said softly. "I would be honored to make her dress. When can she come for measurements and to discuss what she wants?" "I will send her into town later this week. Thank you, Miss Bradford. I appreciate your skill." He settled his hat back on his head and turned to go, then paused. "By the way, I have been meaning to ask. The ranch has its annual barbecue in 2 weeks, just after the harvest. All the hands and their families, plus folks from town. It has become something of a tradition. I would be pleased if you would attend as my guest." Tabitha stared at him, certain she had misheard. "I am sorry, what, the barbecue? It is Saturday, September 14th. Plenty of food, music, dancing. A chance to meet more folks from around the area." He smiled. "You have been here over a month now, and I imagine you have not had much opportunity for socializing. Consider it a welcome to the community." "That is very kind, Mr. Zander, but I do not think." Tabitha floundered, her mind racing. Why would he invite her? Was it some sort of joke? She could imagine the reactions of the other guests, the beautiful young women who would be there, when they saw him arrive with her. "No need to decide now," Lucas said easily. "Think about it and let me know. I will be in town again before then." With another tip of his hat he left, and Tabitha sat frozen, staring after him. "Well," Mrs. Aliner said from behind the counter, her tone arch, "that was unexpected." "I cannot possibly go," Tabitha said, more to herself than to the older woman. "It would be absurd." "Why?" "Lucas Zander invited you. He does not strike me as the sort of man who says things he does not mean. He is being kind, charitable. He feels sorry for me." The words tasted bitter in Tabitha's mouth. Mrs. Aliner came around the counter and sat down across from Tabitha, her expression more thoughtful than usual. "Lucas Zander is many things, but he is not the type to offer false charity. If he invited you, it is because he wants you there. Perhaps you should take him at his word." "But why would he want me there?" Tabitha burst out, frustration and confusion warring in her chest. "Look at me, Mrs. Aliner. I am not the sort of woman a man like him associates with." "What sort of woman is that?" Mrs. Aliner asked quietly. "A hard-working one, a skilled one, a respectable one." "Because that is what I see when I look at you, Tabitha Bradford." The use of her first name, rare from the formal Mrs. Aliner, made Tabitha's eyes sting. "You know what I mean," she whispered. "I know what you think I mean, but perhaps you are wrong about what others see." Mrs. Aliner stood, smoothing her apron. "Think about it. A barbecue might do you good. Lord knows you work hard enough to deserve a bit of pleasure." Mary Collins came to the shop 3 days later, a shy girl of 18 with brown hair and a sweet smile. She was accompanied by her mother, a worn-looking woman who clearly worked hard to make ends meet. Tabitha took her time with the measurements, talking with Mary about what she envisioned for her wedding day, drawing sketches until the girl's face lit up with excitement. Oh, Miss Bradford, that is perfect. Exactly what I dreamed of. Mary clasped her hands together. Mr. Xander is so good to us. I do not know how we can ever repay him. He seems to be a generous man, Tabitha said, pinning the muslin pattern. He is the best employer Hank could ask for, Mrs. Collins said firmly. Fair wages, treats his men with respect, helps out when times are hard. When Hank's mother took sick last winter, Mr. Xander paid for the doctor and would not hear of taking it back from Hank's wages. There are not many like him. The more Tabitha heard about Lucas Xander, the more confused she became. His invitation to the barbecue gnawed at her thoughts, keeping her awake at night. Part of her desperately wanted to go, to have one evening where she was not alone in her room, where she might experience something of the life she had left behind in Philadelphia. But a larger part was terrified of the humiliation, of being the object of pity or mockery, of confirming to everyone, including Lucas himself, what a ridiculous notion it was that she might attend as his guest. Lucas came into town the following Saturday, and Tabitha's hands trembled slightly as she hemmed a pair of trousers. She had practiced what she would say, how she would politely decline his invitation while expressing her gratitude. But when he approached her corner, she found the words sticking in her throat. Miss Bradford, have you had a chance to think about the barbecue? His voice was casual, friendly, as if her answer did not matter much either way, though she thought she detected a hint of hopefulness. Mr. Xander, I appreciate the invitation, truly, but I do not think it would be appropriate for me to attend as your guest. The words came out in a rush. I am quite busy with work, and I am certain you have other friends who would be better company. Lucas pulled up a stool and sat down, his long legs stretched out, his expression thoughtful. May I speak plainly, Miss Bradford? Of course, she said, though her stomach clenched with anxiety. I get the sense that you have convinced yourself you do not deserve to enjoy yourself. That somehow you should remain hidden away, working yourself to the bone with no pleasure or companionship, and I am wondering why that is. Tabitha's hands stilled on her sewing. I do not know what you mean. I think you do. His voice was gentle but firm. You are a skilled craftswoman, you conduct yourself with dignity, you work hard and cause no trouble. Yet you act as if you are not worthy of the same courtesies extended to everyone else in this town. Why? You know why, she whispered, unable to meet his eyes. Do I? Explain it to me. Because I am. She gestured helplessly at herself, her face burning. Because I am not like other women, because I am too big, too much. Because people stare and whisper and laugh. Because a man like you should not have to be seen with someone like me. The silence stretched between them, heavy and painful, and Tabitha wished she could take the words back, wished she had simply invented some excuse about a headache or previous commitment. I see, Lucas said finally. And you think that is how I view you? As someone too big, too much, someone I would be ashamed to be seen with. I think you are being kind because you are a good man, but I am not so naive as to believe kindness is the same as genuine interest or friendship. She forced herself to look at him. Please, Mr. Xander. You need not continue this charade. I will not think less of you for withdrawing an invitation made in a moment of charitable impulse. Lucas stood, and for a moment, Tabitha thought he would simply leave, and she felt equal parts relief and devastating disappointment. Instead, he moved closer, his expression serious. Miss Bradford, Tabitha, if I may, I do not do things out of charitable impulse. I invited you because I have noticed you these past weeks. I have seen how you work, how you speak to customers with patience even when they are difficult. I have heard from Mary Collins how excited she is about her dress, how you spent hours making sure every detail was perfect. I have watched you at church, sitting alone, and it occurred to me that perhaps you might appreciate the company of a friend. Not charity. Friendship. Friendship, Tabitha repeated, the word strange on her tongue. Yes. I realize I am not the most exciting company, and heaven knows ranch life is not glamorous, but I enjoy good conversation, and I thought you might as well. The barbecue is just an opportunity for that, nothing more complicated. He paused. Though I will confess, I am also hoping that if you come and see that I am not actually a monster, you might be willing to take supper with me sometime. Maybe at the hotel, where they make a decent roast on Sunday evenings. Tabitha's heart was beating so hard she thought it might burst from her chest. Why? The question came out as a plea. Why me, Mr. Xander? There are dozens of women in this town who would be thrilled to have your attention. Pretty women, thin women, women who would not be an embarrassment to you. You think very little of my judgment if you believe I choose friends based on their waistlines, Lucas said with a slight edge to his voice. And you think even less of yourself if you believe you have nothing to offer beyond your appearance. That is easy for you to say. You do not know what it is like to be looked at the way people look at me. You are right. I don't. I cannot pretend to understand what you have experienced. But I can tell you what I see when I look at you, if you will let me. He waited until she gave a tiny nod. I see someone who has traveled a long way from home alone to build a new life. That takes courage. I see someone talented with her hands, creating beautiful things for others. I see someone who is kind to Mary Collins, even though Mary is just a poor ranch hand's bride who cannot pay much. I see someone who goes to church and keeps her own counsel and does not engage in the gossip that occupies so many folks' time. He paused. And yes, I see someone who is larger than fashionable society deems appropriate. But that is far down the list of things I notice, and it certainly does not make you less worthy of respect or friendship or, dare I say it, courtship. Courtship, Tabitha breathed, scarcely believing she had heard correctly. Eventually, perhaps, if you would allow it, but first friendship, starting with a barbecue if you would do me the honor of attending. Lucas smiled, and it transformed his face, making him look younger, more vulnerable. I make no promises except that there will be plenty of food, some of it even edible, and I will do my best to ensure you enjoy yourself. What do you say? Tabitha looked down at her hands, worn from years of work, then back up at this confounding man who seemed to see something in her that she could not see in herself. Every instinct screamed at her to refuse, to protect herself from inevitable disappointment and humiliation. But there was something in his eyes, a sincerity that was impossible to fake, that made her wonder if perhaps, just perhaps, she might be wrong about everything. All right, she said softly. I will come to your barbecue, Mr. Xander. His smile widened into something truly joyous. Lucas. Please call me Lucas. And thank you, Tabitha. I promise you won't regret it. After he left, Tabitha sat for a long time, her sewing forgotten, trying to process what had just happened. Lucas Xander, the most eligible bachelor in the county, had essentially declared his intention to court her. It was impossible. It was absurd. It was terrifying. And yet a small, fragile hope had taken root in her chest, a hope she had not allowed herself to feel in years. The 2 weeks until the barbecue passed in a strange blur of anticipation and dread. Tabitha found herself taking extra care with her appearance, attempting to fix her hair in more flattering styles, wishing she had a prettier dress, though she knew it would make little difference. She finished Mary's wedding dress, and when the girl came for the final fitting, she wept with happiness, declaring it the most beautiful thing she had ever owned. Lucas came to collect it personally, and his eyes softened when he saw how Mary looked in the gown. You have a rare gift, Tabitha, he said, and she glowed under his praise. On the morning of the barbecue, Tabitha woke early, her stomach in knots. She washed carefully, braided her dark hair into a crown around her head, and put on her best dress, a dark green cotton that was at least not visibly mended. She looked at herself in the small mirror and tried to see what Lucas claimed to see, but all she saw was the same round face, the same heavy body, the same woman she had always been. She almost talked herself out of going a dozen times, but then she remembered the look in Lucas's eyes, the sincerity in his voice, and she forced herself to wait downstairs at the appointed time. Lucas arrived in a wagon at precisely noon, and his face lit up when he saw her. "Tabitha, you look lovely. That color suits you." "Thank you," she managed, allowing him to help her up onto the wagon seat, acutely aware of how much effort it took for her to climb up, even with his assistance. But if Lucas noticed or minded, he gave no sign of it. The ride to the ranch took about 40 minutes, and Lucas kept up a steady stream of conversation, pointing out landmarks, telling her about the history of the area, asking her about her life in Philadelphia. Tabitha found herself relaxing despite her nerves, drawn in by his easy manner and genuine interest. He did not speak down to her or treat her with excessive delicacy, but simply talked to her as an equal, and she found herself responding more openly than she had with anyone since arriving in Wyatt. The ranch itself was larger than she had expected, with a sprawling main house, several barns and outbuildings, and extensive corrals filled with cattle. As they approached, Tabitha could see people gathering in a cleared area near the largest barn, tables set up and laden with food, children running about playing, men clustered in groups talking. Her anxiety spiked and she gripped the edge of the wagon seat. "Hey," Lucas said softly, glancing at her. "You all right? Just nervous," she admitted. "No need to be. These are good people and you are my guest. Anyone who has a problem with that will answer to me." There was steel beneath the gentle words, and Tabitha felt some of her fear ease. Lucas helped her down from the wagon and kept a light hand at her elbow as he guided her toward the gathering. Heads turned as they approached, and Tabitha saw surprise, curiosity, and yes, some poorly concealed judgment on various faces. But Lucas seemed oblivious, greeting his ranch hands and their families with genuine warmth, introducing Tabitha to everyone they encountered. "This is Hank, my foreman," Lucas said, presenting a tall, sturdy man with sun-weathered skin. "And his bride-to-be, Mary, Miss Bradford." Mary rushed forward, her face alight. "I am so glad you are here. I have been telling everyone about my beautiful dress. Thank you again so much. It was my pleasure, Mary." "You will make a beautiful bride," Tabitha said, and found herself enveloped in an enthusiastic hug that nearly knocked her off balance. When Mary released her, Hank stepped forward, extending his hand. "I understand we have you to thank for making Mary so happy, Miss Bradford. And Lucas here for paying for it. We are grateful." His handshake was firm, his eyes kind. "I look forward to seeing the ceremony," Tabitha said, and meant it. Lucas guided her to a table set up in the shade, ensuring she had a cool drink and a place to sit, then excused himself to check on the food preparation. Tabitha sat quietly, watching the activity around her, feeling both part of it and separate from it. Several women came by to chat, some genuinely friendly, others clearly curious about why Lucas had invited her. She answered questions politely but without elaboration, unwilling to give gossips more ammunition. When Lucas returned, he was carrying 2 plates piled high with food, slow roasted beef, beans, cornbread, coleslaw, and various other dishes. He set one in front of Tabitha and sat down with the other, immediately digging in with obvious appetite. Tabitha stared at the plate, her stomach twisting. It was so much food, more than she would normally allow herself to eat in public, and she was acutely aware of the people around them, potentially watching, judging. She picked up her fork but found herself unable to take a bite, frozen by self-consciousness. "Something wrong?" Lucas asked, pausing in his own eating. "If you do not like beef, there is chicken as well." "No, it is not that. It is a lot of food." Her voice was barely above a whisper. Lucas looked at her plate, then at her face, and understanding dawned in his eyes. "Tabitha, are you worried about eating in front of people?" She could not answer, her throat tight with shame. He set down his fork and leaned toward her, his voice low and meant only for her ears. "Listen to me. There is good food here, food we worked hard to prepare. I want you to eat and enjoy it. That is the point of a barbecue, to eat too much, talk too much, and have a good time. I do not want you sitting here hungry because you are worried about what someone might think. Do you understand?" "It is not that simple," she said, her eyes burning with unshed tears. "Why not? Because I eat too much." The words burst out of her, years of shame and self-loathing compressed into that one sentence. "That is why I look like this. That is why people stare and judge. Because I cannot control myself, because I eat when I should not, because I am greedy and weak and—" "Stop." Lucas's voice was firm, cutting through her spiral. "Stop right there. First of all, I do not believe for 1 second that you are greedy or weak. Second, your size is not a moral failing, no matter what some people might think. Third, and most important, I invited you here because I want your company, and part of that is sharing a meal together. So I am asking you, as my guest, to eat this food that was prepared for you. Not because you have to, but because I want you to enjoy it, because I want to sit here with you and eat and talk and not have you suffering through every bite." Tabitha looked at him, at the earnest sincerity in his face, and something inside her cracked open. "You really mean that? Every word?" "And Tabitha, if it makes any difference, I find you lovely exactly as you are. I am not interested in some imaginary thinner version of you. I am interested in the woman sitting in front of me right now." He smiled, a touch of humor entering his voice. "So please eat. Because the food is getting cold and I have been smelling that beef cooking since dawn, and I would like to enjoy my meal with you." Slowly, hesitantly, Tabitha picked up her fork and took a bite of beef. It was tender and flavorful, seasoned perfectly, and despite her anxiety, her mouth watered. Lucas resumed eating, keeping up a light conversation about the ranch, the cattle, the plans for the fall roundup. And gradually, Tabitha found herself relaxing, taking another bite, then another. The food was delicious, and she was hungry, and Lucas seemed genuinely happy to see her eating, commenting enthusiastically about various dishes and encouraging her to try everything. "The cornbread is Maria's recipe," he said, referring to his cook. "She brought it from her mother in Texas, and I swear it is the best I have ever tasted. And you have to try the peach cobbler later. Mrs. Caldwell from the boarding house made it, and she is famous for her desserts." By the time Tabitha finished her plate, she felt comfortably full rather than stuffed, and more content than she had been in months. Lucas grinned at her, his own plate empty as well. "See, that was not so bad, was it?" "No," she admitted. "Thank you, Lucas, for understanding. For not making me feel bad about it. Nothing to feel bad about. You are supposed to enjoy food. Life is short and often hard. We should take pleasure where we can find it." He stood, offering his hand. "Come on, let me show you around the place. I am quite proud of what we have built here." The afternoon passed in a pleasant haze. Lucas walked her through the barns, showing her the horses he was breeding, the milk cows, the chickens that provided eggs for the ranch. He introduced her to more of his hands, men who clearly respected him and worked hard to keep the ranch running smoothly. She met their wives and children and found most of them friendly and welcoming, curious about the woman who had captured their boss's attention. "Lucas never brings anyone out here," one of the women, Ellen, told Tabitha while they watched the children play. "He is always too busy working. It is good to see him taking time for himself." As evening approached, someone brought out a fiddle and dancing began. Tabitha watched from her seat, tapping her foot to the lively music, and was startled when Lucas appeared in front of her, hand extended. "Dance with me." "Lucas, I cannot. I do not know how to dance like that, and I—" She gestured helplessly at herself. "I am not built for dancing." "Nonsense. Anyone can dance. It is just moving to music. Come on, I will teach you." When she still hesitated, he added softly, "Please, I promise I will not let you fall." Against her better judgment, Tabitha allowed him to pull her to her feet and lead her to where other couples were swirling and stomping to the fiddle's cheerful tune. Lucas put one hand at her waist, took her hand with his other, and began to guide her through the steps. She stumbled at first, self-conscious and awkward, but he was patient, showing her the pattern again and again until she started to get the rhythm. And then, miraculously, she was dancing, really dancing, her body moving with the music, Lucas's strong arms guiding her confidently through the crowd. She was breathless and laughing by the time the song ended, her face flushed and her heart pounding. "That was wonderful. You are a natural," Lucas said, grinning down at her. "Another." They danced 3 more songs before Tabitha begged for mercy, her feet aching and her lungs burning. Lucas fetched her cold cider and they sat together as the light faded and lanterns were lit, casting a warm glow over the gathering. People began to drift home, calling goodbyes, and Lucas made no move to rush her, content to sit and talk as the evening deepened into night. "Thank you for today," Tabitha said when they were finally alone except for a few lingering ranch hands cleaning up. "I cannot remember the last time I enjoyed myself so much." "Then we will have to do it again soon," Lucas said. "That supper I mentioned at the hotel. Are you free next Sunday evening? You still want to have supper with me, even after spending an entire afternoon in my company?" She tried to make it a joke, but her voice betrayed her uncertainty. "Especially after spending the afternoon in your company. I find I like you quite a lot, Tabitha Bradford. I like your quiet strength and your kindness and the way your eyes light up when you smile. I like that you take your work seriously and that you listen when people talk and that you are willing to try new things even when they scare you." He reached over and gently took her hand, his thumb brushing over her knuckles. "I like you, and I would very much like the opportunity to know you better, if you will allow it." Tabitha looked down at their joined hands, his so much larger than hers, calloused from ranch work but gentle in their touch. "I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop," she whispered, "for you to realize what you are doing and come to your senses." "What if my senses are perfectly intact and I know exactly what I am doing?" Lucas countered. "What if you are the one who needs to adjust her thinking? That is a terrifying prospect, I know, but sometimes the most terrifying things are the most worthwhile." He squeezed her hand gently. "No pressure, Tabitha. We can go as slow as you need, but I am not going anywhere and I am not going to suddenly change my mind. I am a stubborn man when I have set my sights on something. And you have set your sights on me." She had to hear him say it again, had to be sure she was not dreaming. "Yes, completely and thoroughly, so get used to it." The ride back to town was quiet, both of them tired but comfortable in the silence. When Lucas helped her down from the wagon in front of the mercantile, he held her hand a moment longer than necessary. "Sunday evening, then. I will call for you at 6. "Yes, Sunday at 6. Tabitha smiled, a real smile that came from somewhere deep inside. "Good night, Lucas." "Good night, Tabitha. Sweet dreams." She climbed the stairs to her room in a daze, her feet aching and her dress smelling of wood smoke and dust, and she had never felt more alive. She lay in bed replaying every moment of the day, Every word Lucas had spoken, every gentle touch, and allowed herself, for the first time in longer than she could remember, to hope. The week that followed was torturous in its slow passage. Tabitha worked on Mary's final alterations and took on new commissions, her hands busy even as her mind wandered constantly to Lucas and his green eyes and his words. He came into town twice during the week, ostensibly for supplies, but both times he found reasons to stop by the mercantile and chat with her for a few minutes. The second time, he brought her a small bouquet of wildflowers, and she pressed them between the pages of her Bible when they dried. Sunday finally arrived, and Tabitha spent an embarrassing amount of time getting ready. She had used some of her wages to purchase fabric from Mrs. Aliner, and had stayed up late several nights making herself a new dress, deep blue with tiny white flowers printed on it. It was the nicest thing she had owned in years, and though it still strained across her body, it fit better than her old dresses and made her feel almost pretty. Lucas arrived promptly at 6, wearing a clean shirt and vest, his hair still damp from washing. His eyes widened when he saw her. "Tabitha, you look beautiful. Is that a new dress? I made it. I hope it is appropriate for the hotel dining room." She fidgeted with her collar, suddenly uncertain. "It is perfect. You are perfect. Come on, I am starved and I have been thinking about their pot roast all day." The hotel dining room was modest but respectable, with white tablecloths and candles on each table. A few heads turned when they entered, and Tabitha saw the hostess's eyebrows rise in surprise, but Lucas seemed oblivious, guiding Tabitha to a table by the window with perfect composure. He held her chair for her, a gesture that made her feel like a proper lady, and took his own seat with a contented sigh. "I do not get into town for a proper meal often enough," he said. "Usually I am eating Maria's cooking at the ranch, which is excellent, but it is nice to have someone else do the serving for a change." They ordered the pot roast and vegetables, and as they waited for the food, Lucas asked about her week, about her work, about whether she had heard from anyone in Philadelphia. Tabitha found herself talking more freely than she had with anyone in years, telling him about her parents' deaths, about the seamstress who had trained her, about the small apartment she had shared with another working girl, and the long days bent over her needle. Lucas listened with genuine interest, asking questions, making sympathetic comments, never once looking bored or impatient. When the food arrived, steaming and fragrant, Lucas gestured at her plate with his fork. "Please enjoy. I meant what I said at the barbecue. I want you to eat without worrying." "It is hard to break habits formed over years," Tabitha admitted. "I have spent so long trying to make myself smaller, to take up less space, to eat less. It feels wrong to just relax about it. I understand habits are hard to break. But maybe you could try to form new habits. Better ones." Lucas cut a piece of meat, chewing thoughtfully. "You work hard, Tabitha. Your body needs fuel. And beyond that, food is meant to be enjoyed, not endured. Life has enough misery without adding to it unnecessarily." "You make it sound so simple. In some ways it is. In other ways I know it is not. But I am a patient man, and I am willing to keep reminding you as long as it takes." He smiled at her. "Besides, I have an ulterior motive. I enjoy watching you enjoy yourself. It makes me happy to see you happy." They talked through the entire meal, conversation flowing easily from topic to topic. Lucas told her about the ranch, about his childhood in Missouri, about his parents and the sister he had lost. His voice grew thick when he spoke of them, and Tabitha reached across the table impulsively to touch his hand. "I am so sorry for your loss. I know what it is like to lose your family. Thank you. It was a long time ago now, but I still miss them, especially my sister Lily. She was only 15, so full of life and joy. She would have liked you." He turned his hand over, palm up, and laced his fingers through Tabitha's. She was always bringing home stray animals, anything wounded or lost. She had the biggest heart. Mother used to say Lily could not stand to see anything suffering. She sounds wonderful, she was, and she taught me that the most important thing in life is kindness. Everything else, money, success, reputation, it means nothing if you treat people cruelly. He squeezed her hand gently. "So when I see you sitting alone in church, or working yourself to exhaustion, or denying yourself simple pleasures because you think you do not deserve them, I think about Lily and what she would say. She would tell me to be kind, to see the person, not what society says about them." Tabitha's eyes filled with tears. "You are a good man, Lucas Zander. I am just a man trying to do right by people I care about, and I am finding that I care about you quite a lot, Tabitha Bradford." After supper, Lucas walked her back to the mercantile, the evening warm and fragrant with the scent of late summer flowers. They walked slowly, neither wanting the evening to end, and when they reached the door, Lucas turned to face her. "I had a wonderful time tonight. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for inviting me, for everything, really. You have been kinder to me than I deserve." "You deserve all the kindness in the world," Lucas said firmly. "And I intend to prove that to you if you will let me. May I see you again? Perhaps next Saturday we could take a drive out to the creek. It is pretty this time of year, and there is a spot I think you would like." "I would like that very much," Tabitha said softly. Lucas reached up and gently tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear, his fingers lingering against her cheek. "Good night, Tabitha. Dream of happy things." "Good night, Lucas." She watched him walk to his horse and mount up, turning to wave once before riding off into the darkness. Tabitha pressed her hand to her cheek where he had touched her, her heart so full she thought it might burst. The next weeks fell into a pattern that felt like a dream. Lucas came to town every few days, always finding reasons to stop by the mercantile, and they spent time together whenever they could, sometimes just talking while Tabitha worked, sometimes going for walks or drives into the countryside. Lucas seemed determined to show her every beautiful spot within riding distance, and Tabitha found herself seeing Missouri through new eyes, appreciating the rolling hills and wide skies, the way the light slanted through the trees, the peaceful sound of the creek flowing over rocks. They attended Mary and Hank's wedding together, and Tabitha glowed with pride when everyone complimented the dress. Mary looked radiantly happy, and when she threw her bouquet, it sailed directly to Tabitha, who caught it reflexively. The unmarried girls giggled, and Tabitha blushed scarlet, but Lucas just grinned and squeezed her hand. "It is a sign," he whispered in her ear, and Tabitha's heart raced. As September faded into October, the weather cooled and the leaves began to turn brilliant shades of red and gold. Lucas invited Tabitha to the ranch for Sunday dinner, and she met Maria, his cook, a sturdy Mexican woman with warm eyes who embraced Tabitha like a long-lost daughter. "It is about time you brought a nice girl home," Maria scolded Lucas in accented English. "I have been telling you for years you work too hard, you need a wife. Finally, you listened to old Maria." "I never said anything about a wife," Lucas protested, but he was smiling, and Tabitha saw the affection between them. Maria served an enormous meal, enchiladas and rice and beans and fresh tortillas, and she heaped Tabitha's plate with obvious approval. "Eat, eat. You are too thin, you need meat on your bones. Lucas, tell her to eat." Tabitha nearly choked on her water, and Lucas laughed outright. "Tabitha, meet Maria, who believes everyone is too thin except herself. Maria, Tabitha does not need me to tell her to eat. She is perfectly capable of feeding herself. HMPH, men, they know nothing. A woman needs to be strong to run a household, to have babies. You eat, yes." Maria looked at Tabitha with such motherly concern that Tabitha found herself nodding. "Yes, Maria, this is delicious, thank you." "Good, good. You are a sweet girl. Lucas is lucky to find you." After dinner, Lucas showed Tabitha the house, which was larger than it looked from outside, with a spacious front room, a formal dining room they never used, a study filled with books and papers, and upstairs, several bedrooms. It was clear the house had been built with a family in mind, and Tabitha felt a pang, imagining Lucas living here alone except for Maria and the occasional ranch hand. "It is a beautiful home," she said, running her hand along the carved banister. "Your parents built it." "Father built it when he and Mother first married. He always said he was building it for the family they would have, and he wanted it to last generations." Lucas's voice was wistful. "I have kept it up as best I can, but it is too big for just me. It needs children running through it, laughter filling the rooms. It needs life." He looked at her as he said it, and Tabitha understood the unspoken question. She felt panic and longing war in her chest. Did Lucas truly see a future with her? Was he imagining her in this house as his wife, the mother of his children? It seemed impossible, yet the way he looked at her said otherwise. "Lucas, I need to ask you something," she said, her voice trembling. "And I need you to be completely honest with me, always. What is it? Why me? Really, truly, why me? I know you have said kind things, but I cannot understand it. You could have any woman you wanted. Pretty women, accomplished women, women who would fit into your life seamlessly. Why would you pursue someone like me, someone who brings nothing but complications and judgment from others?" Lucas took both her hands in his expression serious. "I am going to answer you, but first I want you to listen, really listen, without interrupting or arguing. Can you do that?" Tabitha nodded, her throat tight. "I chose you because when I look at you, I see someone I want to know for the rest of my life. I see intelligence in your eyes, creativity in your hands, kindness in the way you treat others. I see someone who has suffered but has not let it make her cruel. I see someone who works hard and takes pride in her craft. I see someone who makes me laugh, who challenges me to think differently, who listens when I talk about the ranch even though you have no obligation to care about cattle or horses." He paused, his thumbs stroking her hands. "I also see someone beautiful, and before you argue, let me finish. You are beautiful to me, Tabitha. Your smile lights up your whole face. Your hair catches the light like silk. Your body is soft and womanly, and I find myself wanting to touch you, to hold you, to wake up next to you for the rest of my days." Tabitha's breath caught, and tears spilled down her cheeks. "Lucas, I am not done. You think your size makes you less desirable, but to me, it is just part of who you are. It does not define you any more than the color of your hair or eyes defines you. And as for bringing complications, life is complicated no matter what. Yes, some small-minded people might gossip or judge. But those are not people whose opinions I value. The people who matter, the people I respect, they see what I see. They see a good woman who deserves happiness." He released one of her hands to cup her cheek, wiping away her tears with his thumb. "So that is why you, Tabitha. Because you are exactly who I want. No substitutes, no second choices, just you. I am so afraid," she whispered. "Afraid this is a dream and I will wake up. Afraid you will realize you have made a mistake. Afraid I will not be enough. You are more than enough. You are everything." Lucas leaned forward slowly, giving her time to pull away, and pressed his lips to hers in a kiss so tender it made her heart ache. It was her first kiss, and it was everything she had never dared to imagine, gentle and sweet and full of promise. When he pulled back, his eyes were soft. "I am falling in love with you, Tabitha. Actually, I think I already have. I love you too," she said, the words tumbling out before she could stop them. I have loved you for weeks now, but I did not dare say it. Say it again. I love you, Lucas Xander." He kissed her again, deeper this time, and Tabitha felt something inside her shift and settle, like a door opening onto a sunlit room she had not known existed. The next weeks were the happiest of Tabitha's life. Lucas made no secret of his courtship, escorting her to church every Sunday, having dinner with her at least twice a week, stopping by the mercantile daily when he was in town. The gossips had plenty to say, of course, but Lucas ignored them completely, and Tabitha found that their opinions mattered less and less. The people who mattered, the Harrisons, Hank and Mary, Maria, the women at the quilting circle that Tabitha had finally joined, they were all supportive and kind. "I always knew Lucas would choose someone with substance," Mrs. Caldwell said at quilting one Wednesday, and the other women murmured agreement. "He is not the type to be swayed by a pretty face. He wants a partner, someone who can stand beside him and help build a life." "Tabitha will make a wonderful rancher's wife," Mary added. "She is so capable and hardworking." "He has not asked me to marry him," Tabitha protested, though her cheeks flushed with pleasure at their words. "Yet," Mrs. Aliner said knowingly, "but he will." "A man does not court a woman the way Lucas is courting you unless he has marriage on his mind." In late October, Lucas invited Tabitha to the ranch for a picnic. He picked her up early on a Sunday morning, a basket packed with food from Maria, and drove them out to a spot he said was his favorite on the entire property. It was a hilltop overlooking the ranch and the valley beyond, the trees ablaze with autumn color, the sky a brilliant blue. They spread a blanket and sat together, eating cold chicken and biscuits and apples, talking and laughing as they watched the clouds drift past. Tabitha felt utterly content, leaning against Lucas's shoulder, his arm around her waist, and she thought that if she died in that moment, she would die happy. "Tabitha, I have something I want to ask you," Lucas said, his voice suddenly nervous. She sat up, her heart beginning to pound. "What is it? These past months have been the best of my life. Getting to know you, courting you, falling deeper in love with you every day. I cannot imagine my future without you in it. I do not want to imagine it." He shifted, reaching into his pocket and pulling out a small box. "I know we have not been courting very long by some standards, but when you know, you know. And I know that I want to spend the rest of my life with you." He opened the box to reveal a simple gold band with a small diamond, and Tabitha's vision blurred with tears. "Tabitha Bradford, would you do me the honor of becoming my wife? I promise to love you, to cherish you, to support you in all things. I promise to make you laugh and to hold you when you cry. I promise that there will always be plenty of love, plenty of respect, plenty of food on the table and warmth in our home. I promise to spend every day trying to make you as happy as you make me. Will you marry me?" "Yes," Tabitha sobbed. "Yes, Lucas, yes." He slid the ring onto her finger and it fit perfectly, the gold warm against her skin. Then he was kissing her and she was kissing him back, and they were both laughing and crying at once. "I love you so much," Lucas said against her lips. "I am going to spend the rest of my life proving to you that you made the right choice." "You already have," Tabitha said. "You already have." They sat on that hilltop until the sun began to set, making plans for their future, for the life they would build together. Lucas wanted to marry soon before the winter set in, and Tabitha agreed. They would live at the ranch, and Tabitha would continue her sewing work if she wished, or she could focus on managing the household, whatever made her happy. Lucas insisted he had more than enough money to support them both, but Tabitha found she enjoyed her work and wanted to continue it, at least for a while. The wedding was planned for mid-November, and the entire town buzzed with excitement. Tabitha made her own wedding dress, a beautiful creation in ivory silk that Lucas had insisted on buying for her, with delicate lace at the collar and sleeves. She made it to fit her body perfectly, refusing to try to hide her curves or make herself smaller. If Lucas loved her as she was, then she would present herself that way on their wedding day. The night before the wedding, as Tabitha put the final stitches in her dress, Mrs. Aliner came up to her room and sat down on the bed. "I want to apologize to you," the older woman said quietly. Tabitha looked up in surprise. "For what?" "For the way I treated you when you first arrived. I was not unkind precisely, but I was not welcoming either. I made assumptions about you based on your appearance, and I am ashamed of that." Mrs. Aliner's eyes were sad. "Watching you these past months, seeing how you have blossomed with Lucas's love, has made me realize how wrong I was. You are a remarkable young woman, and he is lucky to have you." "Thank you," Tabitha said softly. "That means a great deal to me. You have taught this old woman a valuable lesson. People are so much more than their outsides. I will not forget it." Mrs. Aliner stood and kissed Tabitha's forehead. "Be happy, my dear. You deserve all the happiness in the world." The wedding day dawned cold and crisp, the sky a brilliant blue. Tabitha woke early, her stomach fluttering with nerves and excitement. Mary and some of the other women came to help her dress and fix her hair, weaving flowers into her braids and exclaiming over how beautiful she looked. When Tabitha finally looked at herself in the mirror, she saw not the fat girl she had been told she was all her life, but a bride, glowing with love and joy, about to marry the man of her dreams. The ceremony took place at the church, which was packed with people from town and the ranch. Tabitha walked down the aisle alone, having no family to give her away, but she held her head high, her eyes fixed on Lucas waiting at the altar. He was devastatingly handsome in his best suit, his hair neatly combed, and when she reached him, the look on his face made her knees weak. "You are the most beautiful thing I have ever seen," he whispered, and she believed him. Reverend Matthews performed the ceremony, speaking of love and commitment and partnership. When it came time for the vows, Lucas took both her hands and spoke clearly, his voice carrying through the church. "I, Lucas Zander, take you, Tabitha Bradford, to be my lawfully wedded wife. I promise to love you in sickness and in health, in plenty and in want, for better or worse, for as long as we both shall live. I promise to honor you, to cherish you, to stand by you through all the days of our lives. You are my heart, my home, my everything." Tabitha's voice shook as she repeated her own vows, but she got through them, and when Reverend Matthews pronounced them man and wife, Lucas kissed her with such passion that several of the ladies in the congregation gasped. Tabitha did not care. She was married to the man she loved, and nothing else mattered. The reception was held at the hotel, with more food than Tabitha had ever seen in one place. Lucas made sure she had a plate piled high with everything she wanted, and he sat beside her, one hand clasped with hers, introducing her proudly as his wife to everyone who approached. They cut the cake together, fed each other bites, and danced until Tabitha's feet ached. It was the most perfect day of her life. When it was finally time to leave, Lucas helped her into the wagon for the ride back to the ranch, to the home that was now theirs. Maria had prepared a special dinner for them, but she discreetly disappeared after serving it, leaving them alone in the big house. They ate by candlelight, talking and laughing, and when they finally went upstairs to the bedroom Lucas had prepared, Tabitha felt her nerves returning. "Are you all right?" Lucas asked gently, seeing her nervousness. "Just a little scared," she admitted. "I have never." "I know, we will go slow. We have all the time in the world, and the last thing I want is for you to be uncomfortable." He took her hands, kissing her knuckles. "You are my wife now, Tabitha. Nothing will ever change that. We do not have to do anything you are not ready for. "I want to," she whispered. "I am just nervous." "So am I if it makes you feel better," he smiled. "But I love you and you love me and we will figure it out together." He kissed her then, slow and sweet, and Tabitha felt her fear melting away. Lucas was patient and gentle, taking his time making sure she felt safe and cherished. He whispered how beautiful she was, how much he loved her, how perfect she felt in his arms. And when they finally came together as husband and wife, Tabitha felt a completeness she had never imagined possible. This man loved her, truly loved her, not despite who she was but because of it. He saw her, all of her, and found her worthy of his devotion. Afterward they lay tangled together in the big bed, Lucas's arm around her, her head on his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "Happy," he murmured, pressing a kiss to her hair. "More than I ever thought possible," she said honestly. "Lucas, thank you for seeing me, for loving me, for giving me this life. Thank you for saying yes, for taking a chance on a stubborn rancher who did not have sense enough to give up on you." He tightened his arm around her. "I meant every word of my vows, Tabitha. You are my heart. And I am going to spend the rest of my life making sure you never doubt that." "I don't doubt it. Not anymore." They fell asleep like that, wrapped in each other's arms, and Tabitha's last thought before sleep claimed her was that she had finally found where she belonged. The first year of their marriage was an adjustment, as all marriages are, but it was also deeply joyful. Tabitha settled into life at the ranch, learning the rhythms of the seasons, the patterns of ranch work, the needs of the household. Maria became like a mother to her, teaching her to cook Mexican dishes and sharing stories of her own life. The ranch hands and their families accepted her warmly, and Tabitha found herself part of a community in a way she never had been in Philadelphia. She continued her sewing, taking commissions from townspeople and ranchers' wives, her skill and reputation growing. Lucas built her a proper sewing room with good light and space for her materials, and he often sat with her in the evenings, reading or doing paperwork while she stitched, content in each other's company. Lucas kept his promise about making sure there was always plenty. The pantry was always well stocked, and Maria cooked generous meals that Tabitha ate without guilt or shame. For the first time in her life, she ate when she was hungry, stopped when she was full, and did not agonize over every bite. Interestingly, without the constant anxiety and restriction, her body seemed to settle at a weight that was comfortable, neither gaining nor losing significantly. Lucas never commented on her size except to tell her how beautiful she was, how perfectly she fit in his arms, how much he loved every inch of her. In the spring, Tabitha discovered she was expecting a child. Lucas was overjoyed, immediately becoming ridiculously overprotective, trying to prevent her from doing any work at all. Tabitha laughed at him and continued her normal activities, with some concessions to her changing body. Maria fussed over her, making sure she ate well and rested enough, and Tabitha felt surrounded by love and care. Their son was born in early December, during the first snowfall of the season. The labor was long and difficult, but when Tabitha finally held the tiny red-faced baby in her arms, she wept with joy. Lucas sat beside her on the bed, one arm around her shoulders, staring at their son with wonder. "He is perfect," Lucas whispered. "You are amazing. I love you so much." "I love you too. What should we name him?" They had discussed names for months, unable to decide. But looking at their son now with his shock of dark hair and his father's nose, Tabitha knew, "James, after your father, James Zander." Lucas's eyes filled with tears. "Are you sure?" "I am sure. Your father built this house, this ranch, hoping for generations to follow. Now we have one. It is only right to honor him." They christened James a month later with half the town in attendance. Tabitha stood at the altar holding her son, Lucas's arm around her waist, and looked out at the faces of their friends and community. So many people had come to celebrate with them, to welcome little James into the world. A year ago, she had been alone and despairing, convinced she would never have a family or a home. Now she had everything she had ever wanted and more. The years that followed brought more children, 2 more sons, and then, finally, a daughter they named Lily after Lucas's lost sister. The house that had been so quiet and empty filled with laughter and noise, with the sound of running feet and children's arguments and bedtime stories. Tabitha sewed clothes for her growing family and took commissions when she had time, though her main focus became her children and supporting Lucas in running the ranch. Lucas expanded the ranch steadily, buying more land, increasing the herd, hiring more hands. He involved Tabitha in all major decisions, valuing her opinion and insight. They were true partners in every sense, building a life and a legacy together. On their 10th anniversary, Lucas took Tabitha back to the hilltop where he had proposed. The children were with Maria and they had a rare evening alone. They spread a blanket and watched the sun set over the valley, their fingers intertwined. "You ever regret it?" Lucas asked quietly. "Marrying me, living this life. It is not easy being a rancher's wife. I know you work hard." "Never," Tabitha said firmly. "Not for a single moment. This is everything I ever wanted, even when I did not know I wanted it. You gave me a life, Lucas. Not just a home or a family, though those are precious. You gave me myself. You helped me see that I was worthy of love and happiness. That is a gift beyond measure." "You did the same for me," Lucas said. "After my family died, I closed myself off. I worked and told myself that was enough. But it was not. I was lonely and did not even realize it. And then you came along, this beautiful, talented, kind woman who saw me for who I really was. You made me want to be better, to build something that mattered. You gave me a reason to hope again." "We saved each other then," Tabitha said, leaning her head on his shoulder. "We did. And I would not change a single thing." He kissed her temple. "I love you, Tabitha Zander, today, tomorrow, and always. And I love you, Lucas, forever." As they sat there watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky, Tabitha thought back to that desperate girl who had stepped off the wagon in Wyatt all those years ago, terrified and alone. She thought about the moment Lucas had steadied her when she stumbled, the first time their eyes had met. She thought about his patient courtship, his unwavering belief in her worth, his promise that there would always be plenty. And she thought about how far she had come, how much she had grown, how full her life was now. The obese girl had said, "I eat too much," believing herself unworthy of love or happiness. But the cowboy had replied, "Then I'll make sure there's always plenty." And in doing so, he had given her not just food, but abundance in every aspect of life. Plenty of love, plenty of joy, plenty of family and home and purpose. Plenty of everything that mattered. Tabitha had learned that her worth was not determined by her size, that love was not something she had to earn through deprivation and self-denial. She had learned that she was enough, just as she was. And she had learned that sometimes the most unexpected blessings come when we finally allow ourselves to believe we deserve them. Their children grew strong and healthy, each with their own personality and dreams. James inherited his father's love of the land and took over more and more of the ranch operations as he grew older. The other boys showed interest in different pursuits, and Lucas encouraged them all, wanting them to find their own paths. Little Lily was the image of her namesake, full of life and compassion, always bringing home injured animals and making friends with everyone she met. The ranch prospered under Lucas's management, and the Zander name became synonymous with quality cattle and fair dealing. Lucas and Tabitha became pillars of the community, hosting gatherings at the ranch, supporting the church and school, helping neighbors in times of trouble. Tabitha continued her sewing, now teaching the skill to her daughter and to other young women in the area, passing on the craft that had once been her salvation. As they aged, their love only deepened. They had weathered storms together, literal and figurative, droughts and good years, losses and triumphs. They had raised 4 children who grew into fine adults. They had built not just a ranch, but a home filled with warmth and laughter and love. On the evening of their 25th anniversary, the whole family gathered at the ranch for a celebration. James was there with his new wife, expecting their first child. The other boys were home from their various pursuits, and Lily, now 17 and beautiful, helped Maria prepare a feast. Friends and neighbors filled the house, and Tabitha moved among them, feeling blessed beyond measure. Lucas found her in the kitchen, stealing a moment alone, and pulled her into his arms. "Happy anniversary, my love." "Happy anniversary," she said, kissing him softly. 25 years. Where did the time go? I do not know, but I would not trade a single day of it. He held her close, swaying slightly as if to music only they could hear. "You are still the most beautiful woman I have ever seen. I love you more now than I did the day we married, and I thought that was impossible. We have been blessed, haven't we? With family, with prosperity, with love. More than blessed. We have been given everything that matters." Lucas cupped her face in his hands, looking into her eyes with the same intensity he had shown that first day when he had caught her from falling. "Thank you, Tabitha, for saying yes, for building this life with me, for being my partner in all things. You are my heart now and always." Tears slipped down Tabitha's cheeks, happy tears this time. "And you are mine, always and forever." They returned to the party, to their family and friends, to the celebration of a quarter-century of marriage. As Tabitha looked around the crowded room at the faces she loved, at the home she had helped build, at the man who stood beside her with unwavering devotion, she felt a profound gratitude. Her life had not been easy, and she had carried scars from those early years of rejection and self-loathing. But Lucas had helped her heal, had shown her that she was worthy of every good thing life had to offer. The obese girl who had believed she was too much, that she took up too much space and consumed too much and did not deserve happiness, had become a woman who knew her own value. A woman who had learned to eat without shame, to love without fear, to live with fullness and joy. A woman who had found a man who saw her truly, who loved her completely, who made sure there was always plenty, not just of food, but of everything that made life worth living. And in the end, that was the greatest gift of all. Not the ranch or the prosperity or even the beautiful children, though those were precious. The greatest gift was the knowledge that she was loved, exactly as she was, and that she would be loved for all the days of her life. As the party continued late into the night, Lucas and Tabitha slipped outside for a moment alone under the stars. The air was cool and clear, and they could hear music and laughter drifting from the house behind them. "You remember the first time we stood under these stars together?" Lucas asked, his arm around her waist. "The night I proposed. I remember every moment of that night. I was so scared and so happy all at once. I was terrified you would say no. I had rehearsed that proposal 100 times and it still came out awkwardly." He chuckled. "But you said yes anyway. There was never any doubt. I loved you even then more than I had ever thought possible to love anyone. We have had a good life, haven't we?" Lucas's voice was soft, reflective. "Better than I ever imagined." "The best life," Tabitha agreed, "and it is not over yet. We have grandchildren to look forward to, more years together, more memories to make." Speaking of which, I have been thinking. With James taking over more of the ranch work, I will have more free time. What would you say to taking a trip? Maybe to San Francisco, see the ocean. We have never had a proper honeymoon. Tabitha laughed with delight. Lucas Xander, are you suggesting we abandon our responsibilities and go gallivanting across the country? That is exactly what I am suggesting. We have earned it, don't you think? I think it sounds wonderful. Let us do it. Let us have an adventure. They stayed out there for a long time, planning their trip, reminiscing about the past, dreaming about the future. And when they finally returned to the house, to the warmth and noise and celebration, they did so hand in hand as they had been from the very beginning. Years later, when Tabitha was an old woman surrounded by grandchildren and great-grandchildren, she would look back on her life with deep satisfaction. She had overcome so much, had learned hard lessons about self-worth and love and acceptance. She had taken the broken pieces of who she was and built something beautiful, with the help of a good man who had seen her value when she could not see it herself. And she would tell her granddaughters, especially the ones who struggled with their own insecurities and fears, about the cowboy who had promised that there would always be plenty. She would tell them that love was not about being perfect or fitting some impossible standard, but about finding someone who saw you truly and loved you anyway. She would tell them that they were worthy, just as they were, and that the right person would see that. But more importantly, she would tell them that they had to see it themselves first. That the real journey was learning to love yourself, to treat yourself with the same kindness and compassion you would show to others. That food was nourishment and pleasure, not the enemy. That bodies came in all shapes and sizes and all of them were good. That worth was not measured in pounds or inches, but in kindness, integrity, courage, and love. She would tell them about the girl she had been, scared and ashamed, and the woman she had become, strong and loved. And she would tell them that if she could make that journey, so could they. On a crisp autumn day, much like the day she had first arrived in Wyatt so many years before, Tabitha sat on the porch of the ranch house, a quilt spread over her lap, watching the sun set over the valley. Lucas sat beside her, his hair now white, his face lined with age but his green eyes still bright with intelligence and love. "It has been a good day," he said, taking her hand. "Every day with you has been a good day," Tabitha replied. "Even the hard ones, especially the hard ones. Those taught us what we were made of, what we could endure together." Lucas raised her hand to his lips, kissing her knuckles gently. "I would do it all again, you know, every moment, every decision, all of it just to end up right here, right now with you. As would I. You gave me everything, Lucas. A home, a family, a purpose. But most of all, you gave me the courage to be myself, to stop hiding and apologizing for taking up space in the world. You taught me that I was enough. You taught yourself that. I just reminded you of what was already there," he smiled. "Though I will take credit for the excellent decision to marry you. That was definitely my best idea ever." They sat in comfortable silence, as the sun painted the sky in shades of orange and pink and purple. Behind them, the house was full of family, multiple generations gathered for Sunday dinner as had become their tradition. Soon they would be called in to eat, and the table would groan under the weight of all the food, and there would be laughter and arguments and stories told and retold. But for now, it was just the two of them, the girl and the cowboy, who had found each other against all odds and built a life that was full of plenty. Plenty of love, plenty of laughter, plenty of heartache and joy, plenty of everything that made life rich and meaningful. "Thank you," Tabitha whispered, though she was not entirely sure who she was thanking. Lucas, certainly, for his unwavering love and support. God, perhaps, for bringing them together. Or maybe she was thanking herself for having the courage to accept love when it was offered, for choosing to believe in happiness even when it seemed impossible. "Thank you," Lucas echoed, and she knew he understood. As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, they rose and went inside together, to their family, to their home, to the life they had built one day at a time, one choice at a time, one meal shared together at a time. And in that moment, Tabitha Bradford Zander knew with absolute certainty that she had found everything she had ever needed. The obese girl who had said, "I eat too much," had learned that she was not too much at all. She was exactly right. And the cowboy who had replied, "Then I'll make sure there's always plenty," had kept his promise every single day of their lives together. There had always been plenty, more than enough, an abundance of all the things that truly mattered. And they lived, not just happily ever after in some fairy tale sense, but really lived with all the complexity and challenge and beauty that real life brings. They loved each other through good times and bad, through sickness and health, through joy and sorrow, just as they had promised. They raised their children to be kind and hardworking and true to themselves. They built a legacy that would last generations. And when, many years later, they finally passed from this world within months of each other, as couples who have been together for a lifetime often do, they left behind a family that carried their love forward. Their children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren would tell stories about Lucas and Tabitha, about the love they shared, about the ranch they built, about the lessons they taught. They would tell about the cowboy who saw beyond appearances to the heart of the woman he loved. They would tell about the seamstress who learned to value herself and built a life of purpose and joy. They would tell about two people who found each other in a dusty Missouri town in 1878 and created something beautiful together. And most importantly, they would pass on the lesson that love is not about perfection, but about acceptance. That worth is inherent, not earned. That there should always be plenty, plenty of kindness, plenty of compassion, plenty of grace for ourselves and others. And that when you find someone who sees you truly, who loves you completely, who makes sure there is always plenty of everything you need, you hold on tight and never let go. That was the legacy of Lucas and Tabitha Zander, and it endured long after they were gone, a testament to the transformative power of love and the beauty of two lives joined together in partnership and devotion. Their story became part of the fabric of Wyatt, Missouri, told and retold, inspiring others to look beyond the surface, to see the person beneath, to choose love over judgment, acceptance over criticism. And somewhere, in whatever comes after this life, Lucas and Tabitha were together still, walking hand in hand through eternal fields under eternal stars, knowing that they had lived well and loved completely, and that their story would never truly end.